the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 3. This is my first Adidas racing shoe ever. And the questions here are, how did we get here? And is this shoe going to be the bang for your buck? Let's get into it. So before we get into the video, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're subscribed watching content. Thanks so much. Love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other updates and things like that. So without further ado, let's begin. Specs somewhere up here for the shoe. And before we get into it, I guess the question here is, as somebody who has been racing in almost exclusively Nike shoes for the last 5 years, 6 years of my running career, how or why did we make this jump to the Adios Pro 3, particularly an Adidas shoe as well? So we're almost changing the brands here. And I've already ranted about this multiple times on various videos, is that the Nike product is beginning to concern me as its quality is diminishing, in my opinion, okay? And as I was testing Adidas product the last year in 2023, particularly the Boston 11 and the Boston 12, there was a lot of potential and a lot of things I really enjoyed about the shoes. So I figured, take the leap, test this shoe out, and see if it's going to be race worthy. And it's also been purchased exclusively right now because I have a half marathon coming up this weekend, and the Vaporfly Next Percent 3 is like my shoe of choice as a backup for the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. But I'm also kind of pulling this Hail Mary move of attempting to test out a whole different running shoe a couple of days before the race to see if this thing is going to be worth it and if it's worth it jumping in this thing in such a short period of time. And most people will say no, but you never know. So anyways, let's go into what's going on at the bottoms with our first impressions, our first break-ins. What you're seeing here is basically the shoe after about 10 miles, I would say. I did 2 runs. One was a 10K yesterday, and one was an easy 4-miler today, just to kind of keep it easy, test out the turnover of the shoe, and just really just kind of feel that out. You know what I mean? So, yeah, now that we've kind of explained how we got here, let's talk about what's good about this shoe right off the rip. So, obviously with the specs, nothing too unusual. We have a very light mesh going on the upper. It's sort of resembling what the Boston 11 and the Boston 12 sort of had. And I'll make this one caveat really clear. I have not run in the Pro or the Pro 2 version of this shoe. So I haven't run in its predecessors. And the only other experience I have with any sort of Adidas product is the Boston, so I will use the Boston as a reference point for a lot of this comparison, you know, or for this first impressions breakdown. So that being said, a lot of upper kind of resembles what the Boston 12 sort of sat by, but the upper is a little bit also, it's a little bit tighter to resemble more of what the Boston 11 had. So it has the breathability of the 12, the tightness of the 11, which is good, that's what we're looking for. And we've got this interesting shoelace pattern here with this like pull tab towards the front area of the shoe, probably to prevent any sort of scrunching and maybe keep this area as streamlined as possible, despite the fact that I have a little bit of scrunching from like a textile piece here. That's how I got the shoe. So it's only in this shoe that's prevalent. It's just maybe a smidgen in the right foot, but I suspect this will kind of wean itself out over time, fingers crossed. So we do have a gusseted tongue that's also got some breathability on it, and I'm hoping, based on the materials used here, that if there's any sort of water that's in contact with the shoe, it's able to kind of, vent itself out. It won't necessarily stick in the shoe. I think that's the idea here with the overall structure of the upper, kind of like what the Vaporfly Next Percent 1 and the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 were sort of trying to accomplish. Don't store any water, let the water kind of flow out of the shoe if need be, and yeah, that'd be kind of your ideal race day scenario should you be using this in the rain. Now, foams, my understanding of this is that we have one giant piece of Light Strike Pro here at the bottom, and then we have a second compound of Light Strike also running at the top. It might also be like an EVA variation, similar to how the Boston 11 and the Boston 12 were built out. And we still have the energy rods in the shoe, which is like this plastic nylon claw shape that kind of runs the duration of the shoe. It's not so much of a plate as much as just like energy rods going through the shoe. Literally, that's kind of what it means. And yeah, I guess it just provides that carbon plate style rebound with a little bit more, well, one, flexibility, and two, probably more specificity in your foot. So instead of like, if you're more of a toe striker in like, you have more of pronation, maybe the energy rod on this end of the shoe is going to help kind of push rather than have an entire plate kind of rebound and rely on a perfect strike every single time for that perfect rebound. So that could be something that's sort of thought about there in terms of its overall construction, unless I like saw what Adidas plan with the shoe with that in that kind of cases with the energy rods. It's hard to make that assertion, and plus I don't like have a lab where I can like test something like that, so all speculation based on its design, right? Or maybe even copyrights from a carbon plate that exists with a different brand. Who knows? Other things, we do have the Continental rubber running the duration of the shoe, and it is this unique pattern that when I looked at it for the first time, it reminded me of like, if you guys remember, like the fruit roll-up snacks, like it's basically this long roll of, I guess, a fruit punch or like a fruit snack, just kind of like flattened out, and you can eat it like tape, basically. This is kind of what the foam reminds me of. That looks like just like one giant fruit roll-up kind of covering up the shoe, with not a lot of track or tread necessarily in this like black area of the foam. So we do have like this piece here that I'm guessing is to provide some additional support and reinforcement. And we do have like this yellow area, which I think has a little bit more strength just for that toe strike area to, have a longer lifespan than I think we would want in something like this. So my speculation is the shoe is designed to survive about 250 to 300 plus miles with the current structure that we have. So now we talk about the ride, and man, there's a lot of cool things about the ride of this shoe that I would like to bring up. First and foremost, well, there's two things of concern that I would definitely think about right now. One is the toe off, and I would say, let me put this the best way possible. It's when you hit the ground, it's your kick up from your foot in your turnover kind of phase. And I haven't experienced the kick from this shoe since at least the Vaporfly Next Percent 1, when I was using it in the early spring and summer of 2019, where like the shoe caught me entirely by surprise, and because of how fast and the type of energy return that shoe provided, it caught me off guard in half marathon season, and I haven't experienced anything like that in a shoe since then. And now I'm experiencing that rebound kind of kick again in this particular shoe, and I don't know if it's because the weight distribution of the shoe is that the majority of the weight is here in the front, and because we cut off this section here, maybe the heel's a little bit lighter, but when you hit the ground and your foot comes back up, there's like momentum in the front area of your foot that's able to get this like kick that feels extraordinarily fast, smooth like butter, and it makes you want to have a quicker turnover as a result. And that is something huge on this type of shoe that, first and foremost, like I enjoy to a level that I haven't experienced since 2019, and it is super exciting to be able to run fast and consistently in this type of shoe. Now, the one thing that I guess strikes people weirdly about this shoe that I actually really enjoy is the overall tightness and sort of early on stiffness of the shoe, and I'll explain why. Back to our comparison with like the Boston series. The Boston 11, one of my top 5 favorite, I think, daily trainers, right? This took what I feel is the good pieces of the Boston 11, which would have been the tightness in the forefoot and like the toe box area, the upper foot layer area of the shoe, and it's just implementing that here, and in addition with all the technologies used in the shoe, gives you a really fast, streamlined race experience that I was looking for since the Boston 11. Because my thought there was, okay, Boston 11 is a really great shoe. People have told me, and I like the people who shipped the Boston 11 to me as well have written that, hey, we ran a half marathon in this shoe. Not specifically the one I had, but like the Boston 11 is such a good shoe, I ran a half marathon in it. my question since then was, can Adidas and when will Adidas have a shoe that simulates the Boston 11's streamline effectiveness, and we put it into a race day style high stack shoe? And I think here it is, right? I'm sure maybe the Pro 2 was similar. Maybe somebody should speak for me in the comments, like if the experience was similar and like the Pro 3 is just a rebranding of the exact same shoe. I don't know. But my guess here is, or based on what I'm seeing here, is that the Pro 3 has the really good pieces of the Boston 11 so far, and I'm crossing my fingers that it doesn't have the bad pieces, which would have been like any sort of rips and tears along the foam to upper kind of stack area from just overuse or like stiffness in the material. I'm hoping that's not the case as we go along in this shoe, because there's so much potential for this thing to be like a really, really badass race day shoe. Other thing that's concerning that I kind of consider a con right now that I'm hoping fixes itself as we go is the shoelace length. So again, taking the good and the bad pieces of the Boston 11, it takes the bad pieces in terms of shoelace length in this case. And I think it's going to be coming down to tightening the upper area here, so having like the most streamlined fit possible before you like fully tie the shoe. And if you're racing in this thing and the shoe comes undone from your shoelace tying job, one of two things probably occurred. One, you just tied the shoe poorly overall, or two, it's possible that you didn't tie it or you didn't tighten it enough in certain areas, and you might experience that during your, in the middle of your race. So that was kind of one of my concerns as well, is shoelace length. But I think the more times I put it on, the more I can get the shoelaces to kind of cooperate a little bit better in that sense. So overall thoughts, I'm not quite ready to say this is going to be my Saturday race day shoe. I would like to do one more run in it, I think, to just kind of solidify that. Otherwise, the Vaporfly Next Percent 3 is going to be that race day shoe upcoming. And then for my future races after this week, the Adizero Adios Pro 3 is most likely going to be my strongest contender until I can start getting my hands on the Alphafly 3, because there's a lot of race day shoes I want to test, considering that the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 overall has sort of let me down with their latest manufactured models that have been released this year. So I kind of talked about that in an earlier video, but again, in the process of now finding a new race day shoe, I'm a little bit more frantic, so I'm going to get my hands on a few of these different race day shoes and decide on what's going to stay and what's going to go overall. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Adios Pro 3 as first impressions and where it would sit in my sort of lineup. If you guys have any agreements or disagreements, let me know in the comments below. Have you raced in this thing? Is this shoe like definitely everything you guys say it is, or is it kind of like a flop after a certain point? Let's kind of just talk about it. Give me your thoughts so I can better understand what I'm dealing with here, because first impressions, man, like this thing is fat. I like this thing a lot so far. Just everything about it just clicks and breathes as a race day style shoe that I would use in the near future. So I think I will leave this here. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys in the next one.